Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast. This is episode 168, presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan 65-Step Strategic Process. For those of you new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. Welcome. And with me today, I'm very honored to have my guest from California, Cheryl Broom, CEO at Graduate Communications. Welcome, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm really excited to be here and to have you here with me too. And Cheryl and I are part of a national network of agency owners, and that's how we've gotten to know each other. And we were recently in Nashville, Tennessee together, and we had quite a time in Nashville.
Yeah. My feet are still sore from all the dancing. I think I've retired my cowboy boots after that trip.
No, that's not possible. You're not doing that. I'm not going to let you. So Cheryl Broom is a national community college leader with a passion for student success and a deep commitment to serving her clients with integrity and passion. For 20 years, Cheryl has worked for and served community colleges across the nation on projects ranging from bond passages to complex marketing campaigns. A former television news reporter, Cheryl brings her knack for storytelling to everyday projects as well as to her presentations. An accomplished public speaker, Cheryl has spoken for Google at their Menlo Park headquarters, has keynoted higher education conferences across the nation, and today is a regular Zoom presenter and moderator. You'll also catch her teaching Communications 101, the dreaded public speaking class, at community colleges across San Diego. So Cheryl, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Oh, wow. I've had an amazing career. I've been really lucky to have done so many great things in the communication field. And when I was in college, I wanted to be an attorney, but then I volunteered at the radio station and fell in love with broadcast journalism. So my parents said, if you go on to law school, we'll pay for it. And I said, no, I want to go be a journalist. So looking back, I don't know if that was the smartest decision. My paycheck out of college was very, very small, but I did join an ABC affiliate and was a reporter for about 5 years. And then I moved into PR and worked in county government doing public information services, and then moved into higher education, where I was a marketing director for a really large college here in San Diego before venturing out into the agency world and serving clients now across the country.
Well, that's really great because you have found a niche that's really strong and has positioned you as a national expert.
Yeah, it's great. I love higher education. I'm super passionate about community colleges. And it's one of those niches where people ask, oh, what's your company do? And I said, we do marketing for community colleges. And people are shocked that you can make money doing that. You can make money marketing for community colleges. But yes, you can, because they need so much help. They're understaffed. Enrollment is down. There's constant projects and challenges that make it really interesting. So it's a great niche to be in. And my husband and I started our company a year and a half ago. And because we are niched, and because we know our audience so well, we've grown tremendously, and we have more than 20 clients right now in 5 different states, and are doing some really amazing work.
Well, that's really great.
Yeah.
And they say that the riches are in the niches.
Oh, I love it.
Have you heard that before?
No, and I think that is so true, because like community colleges, for example, they're very complex. The college I worked at had 21,000 students. We had several thousand faculty members and staff members and committees and locations and type of classes. And once you understand somebody's business and how it operates, then you become an expert in the field, and they want to work with you because they don't have to take 6 months teaching you how they operate and why things are the way they are. So I think having a niche and a focus is so important, and allows you to really grow in expertise and serve people well when you do projects with them.
Yeah, and marketing today is so complex. I mean,
Oh my
because
gosh.
it involves not only like the basics of communications the way it was when I started my business 30 years ago, but then as technology has evolved, I mean, just today I was helping a client with updating forms on their website, and involves, updating some code and,
Right.
things that you would never imagine you would have to do in a marketing role, but there's a
Yeah.
lot
And
to it.
just when you think you have it figured out, Apple goes and does some new release, and a million things change.
That's right.
Oh,
I
so
guess it's
it's
called job
constant.
security for
You
us.
know? Yeah, I mean, you have to know in marketing and in PR the basics of that field, and then knowing your niche and being able to apply those to the niche is kind of the sweet spot. So I think that's,
Right.
yeah.
So who are your clients, and how does your agency work with your clients?
Oh wow. So we have mostly community college clients. We do work with a couple of higher education institutions that aren't community colleges. So we have a private university we work with, and a public university, but most are community colleges. And we do all sorts of things. Like this morning, I was on a big call with one college that offers free training for their community. So they do adult high school diploma, parenting classes, and they mail out this class schedule to 350,000 households. And what's happened over the years is the schedule's grown and grown and grown. And now it's 84 pages, and it's got like a million words in it, and it's dense, and it costs a lot of money. And they're so in the weeds that they can't take a step back and pare it down. So my company is coming in and talking to students and faculty and reworking the entire document. So it's a marketing document. So we do fun things like that. Then we work with faculty to map their programs out. Like, what's a student journey look like to become, a flight attendant? What classes do you need to take? And do you have to have an externship? And what does that look like? And then we also do straight up marketing, like enrollment's down right now, especially at community colleges. I talked to one college yesterday, they're down 21%. And that comes out of the budget. Like if you don't have students paying tuition, you have empty classrooms, and then faculty have to be let go, and nobody wants that. So we help them try to recruit new students too. So lots of different departments we work with and projects we do, and all of them are a little bit different and really challenging and fun.
Yeah, and I can tell that you really understand the business
Yeah.
of community colleges, and that you really listen well to their challenges, and I'm sure they feel really like they're in good hands with you, that you're taking
Yeah.
care of them.
It was funny this morning. We had a recommendation in the class schedule, this project that we're working on, and we wanted to take some information out, and I knew it was going to be a problem. Like I already knew that my recommendation was going to be a difficult conversation. And everybody's so sweet in education. They're like apologizing for disagreeing with me. They're like, "We're so sorry." Like it's okay it's okay. You can disagree. So anyway, we ended up finding a good kind of way around the issue, but But people are really kind. It's a good field to work in. I will say the one thing we don't do are websites, because we'll do small websites, but college websites, like diving into the snake pit. So we're like, one thing we will not touch are college websites, because they're so complicated and difficult. So if you're looking for,
Yeah.
if you're college out there looking for website help, go somewhere else. So,
So enrollment is down, as you mentioned.
mhm.
And what role does marketing have in bringing students back to colleges and universities?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, because in years past, when we have a recession, for example, when we had a recession in the early 2010s, enrollment at colleges skyrocketed, right? Because people lost their jobs and they had nothing to do, so they went back to college. So at that point, marketing really wasn't a priority. So a lot of colleges disinvested in marketing. They took marketing budget away, or they just kind of did some brand marketing, like mailing things out. And then when the pandemic hit, a lot of colleges were like, oh, maybe this will happen again. Enrollment kind of flattened out in between like 2015 and 2020. And people were like, oh, maybe we'll get another boost. Well, that didn't happen. I think the pandemic taught people a lot of lessons. I mean, for me personally, I was working somewhere that I wasn't happy, and I decided to bolt and go start my own company, right? And people are doing that left and right. It's the great resignation, and that goes for college too. I mean, people are saying now, like, I don't want to spend 3.5, 4 years at a community college. I don't want to spend $80,000 to get a 4-year degree. And so enrollments have plummeted everywhere. And now people are panicked, and they're like, wow, we shouldn't have disinvested in marketing, because all that time we weren't telling our story on the value of going to college and why you want a degree and all the amazing careers out there, especially for community colleges. So many amazing things you can do that people don't even know are possibilities, but nobody's been talking about them. And now it's this mad rush. Oh my gosh, enrollment's down, classes start in 6 weeks. Can marketing do something? And in a lot of cases, it's too late. I mean, marketing needs to be ongoing. You need to constantly tell your story, right? Just like in PR, you got to always be telling your story. So right now, we're really doing like, let's just spend as much money as we can and get the word out as fast as we can. But I'm encouraging my clients to step back and take a long look at, you know, enrollment ebbs and flows, and how are you going to be prepared for the next time you have a dramatic decrease. You have to be out there beating the drums and telling your story. Apple doesn't stop marketing, and we all have Apple
Right.
computers and phones, and yeah. So it's
I've
got to be,
always thought of it, it's like the heartbeat, the
yeah,
marketing and PR and communications. It's like a heartbeat. You've got to just show that you're alive and you're doing well and you're doing things, and
exactly.
you can't stop and start.
No, you can't, and you shouldn't, but that's what people do in good times. They're like, oh, we're great. We always joke in higher education, like when enrollment's up, it's because the faculty are great, but when enrollment's down, it's because marketing sucks. So the poor marketing departments, they never get a break. They never catch a break. So
Oh, that's funny. So before we were talking about how marketing has changed over the last 20 years. So what has not changed and what has?
oh, yeah, so I just actually did a webinar this morning with a group called the Texas Association of Community College Marketers, and they wanted a presentation on all the changes in privacy regulations in digital marketing. And so I went through some of the changes that have happened to protect people's privacy. So I think that's one big change that we're seeing now and on the horizon is when digital marketing started, it's kind of the Wild West, and now we have cookies and we're tracked, and everything we do is tracked, and our behavior is tracked, and our locations are tracked, and who we are is tracked. And that's starting to go away because people don't want to be tracked. They don't want the government or Google following them or Facebook following them around. So that's changing. And so what's becoming more important now is back to the basics of great storytelling and good content and showing your audience why they should pay attention to you. And it goes back to what marketers were doing 20 years ago, writing great stories featuring really good things that are happening at your institution, being creative with the type of marketing you're doing so people will pay attention to it. It's kind of coming for full circle. We're going back to the basics.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
for colleges, showing alumni success stories is
Yes.
really, this is the life you can have if you come to this college, just like this person who came here. So,
Yeah, being motivational. And we were going to go, and part of the network you mentioned that we're a part of, we were going to go to the Bahamas. That was on our calendar. It's Nancy and I in the Bahamas. We were going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we were.
And now I think where are we going? We're going to Charleston instead.
Yeah.
So no more Bahamas. But I got really excited about the Bahamas, and I went on the Atlantis website. I was like, what is it going to be like there? And I started getting remarketed from Atlantis, from the resort. And what really stood out to me is I was scrolling through Instagram or Facebook, and I see Atlantis. And instead of just sending me an ad, like come to Atlantis, they were sending me content like, listen to what our top 10 tips are from Atlantis customers. And it would be a video where customers would say like, oh, we really love this restaurant, or this water slide was our favorite. And so it's marketing and advertising because it's paid, but the content made me feel like, wow, look at all these people and what a great time they had. And, so it was really good content.
Yeah.
And the same with, higher ed, like, let's hear from students. Like, what are your tips? What are you doing with your degree? Let's get motivated and inspired rather than just blanketed with ads.
But as you mentioned, great content has to be on the foundation of a great strategy. And like you mentioned, you're encouraging your clients to step back a bit and take a look at their goals and strategies and tactics.
Yeah, because it takes time. That content creation it takes time. Anyone could throw an ad. I could make a Nancy Marshall PR Maven ad in 10 minutes on Canva. But it's not going to tell anybody any of the great work you've done. That's going to take time. That's going to take research and time. And if you don't invest the time when enrollment's down, you don't have anything to say,
Right.
So it needs to be constant. So,
yeah. Well, we're going to continue our conversation in a moment, but first it's time to to learn about getting free access to my book, which is called Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand. You can go to prmaven.com/giveaway and get a free copy today. And we'll be back in just a moment with more from Cheryl Broom.
I'm a prolific listener and reader of things that really relate to innovation, entrepreneurship, and marketing. And when I happened on to Nancy's podcast, I literally was blown away. I listen to things nationally, people that are really acclaimed for what they do. And my personal opinion is that Nancy's got one of the best podcasts going at the moment, but also I think over time, I've gone back and really re-listened to many of those that are in the archives, and they are fantastic. And I would put her up against any other podcaster. It's a light, very flowing interview style. I know that just by listening that the people on the other end are extremely comforting, and she's not trying to one-up on the other person. They're both experts on that podcast, but I really like the fact that Nancy's trying to also learn something every time she interviews. And that comes really, I think, through to me when I'm listening to that as well. And I always learn something.
Well, that was Mike Duguay, who's actually from Thomas College, which is where I earned my master's degree. Yeah, so
and Nancy, that was such a good ad. That's exactly what we were just talking about. That was like, I was super interested in what he said, and it was great.
Yeah, well, he's a big fan of Marshall Communications, so I value him.
And you must know what you're doing.
I've been doing it a long time. I came out of the womb talking, of course. They
I
couldn't shut
know.
me up.
You told me I was born to do this, and
I
you
was.
were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Cheryl, tell us about your efforts to include diversity, equity, and inclusion in your clients' marketing and communications efforts.
Yeah, that's a big topic right now. And so, of course, there's the visual, right? When we do ads, we always want to make sure that we are diverse, that we're inclusive, not just of ethnicity, but age, of disabilities, of background. So visually, our ads have a nod to that. But I think it goes deeper than that. There's some colleges who specifically want to market to underserved populations. Community colleges want to mimic the service area that they're in. So if they're in, a part of Los Angeles that has a high Hispanic or African American population, they want their community college to reflect their community. And so they will develop campaigns to encourage certain populations to come to school, and we will work with colleges to do that. And one project I had last year that I loved was for a college out here in California that is a national leader with DEI efforts. They just do amazing things. They have this center where students can go for food, they can get professional clothing, they have a corrections to college program, they have housing for homeless students. They have tried to remove every barrier to higher education, but they couldn't talk about it. They were struggling with talking about what their commitment was. They couldn't put it into words. And so I felt really intimidated because here's this group of people with doctorate degrees that have worked, in student services for decades. They're experts in student services and diversity. And I'm not at all, but I'm a communications expert. So I worked with them on how to communicate their DEI and student service efforts. And we ended up taking all this information and building this beautiful website that talked about the college's commitment to education, its commitment to diversity. We made ads for African American, Latinx, and APITA students, Asian Pacific Islander and Desi Americans. And it just was fantastic. The campaign has been great. The college has really loved the work. And we were asked to talk about it nationally, which was really cool. So we did a national presentation on it. But it was really interesting because it's like some people are so into their work, they can't, see the forest through the trees.
Right.
They need someone else to come in from the outside and say, wow, this is incredible. And this is how it all fits together. And this is how you can talk about it. So I loved that project. It was really rewarding to help them do that.
Well, with imagery, whether you're working in tourism or education, people need to be able to look at a photo or video
Yeah.
and see themselves there.
Right.
And so if you're a person of color and you're just looking at pictures of a lot of white people, it's like, I can't picture myself there.
Yeah.
But I do remember working with a college here in Maine, and it was totally a white student population, and we were trying to encourage diversity. So we didn't want to be, represent the college, untruthfully. So that
Right.
was a challenge. Like, where, do you
To
just,
balance that.
yeah, do you
Yeah.
find the one person of color and put them in all the brochures?
It's like the same person everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, for this college, we made a hashtag, one campus for all. So their marketing has a hashtag that is kind of this commitment that we're one campus for everybody, that everybody's welcome. And then in each of the different publications to each target audience, they have, outreach people go in the community. So if they go into, to speak to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, they bring with them now a publication that has a picture of Hispanic students with language around, like, here's the clubs that might be of interest to Latinx students. We have Puente, we have support for Dreamers. So it's beyond just photography. It's like, here's how we support you as a student. So like our African American material had information about articulation agreements that they have with historically Black colleges. So it's like, you can come here and we have transfer agreements for you to go to a historically Black college. So it's talking about all these things they've set up in a way that's really positive and welcoming to students of that background. So it's really cool.
Well,
Yeah.
those are really helpful tips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So think about those connections, and and you have to be honest too. You can't.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. Honesty is part of building trust. And
Yes.
yeah. So why did you choose to work with the college and university market specifically?
Well, that's my background. I told you I was worked in county government, so I actually worked for a sheriff's department. I covered this story as a reporter. It was during Y2K, and there was a man hiding out in the forest with a bunch of assault rifles, and he was running around naked. And what I've learned in law enforcement is when somebody's running around naked, like, there's something wrong. There's just something wrong. So
Yeah.
it actually ended up to be a terrible encounter. One of the lieutenants was training a new deputy, and they got in a shootout with this man, and they all killed each other. And it was the lieutenant's last day on the job. And the deputy had a pregnant wife at home and was, had only been a deputy for about 6 months. So because it had this Y2K angle with this guy hoarding weapons, and he'd written this manifesto, the whole nation became like interested in the story. And we were in a small town in Northern California, and CNN came out, MSNBC came out, people were coming out to cover this story. And the sheriff in the town couldn't handle the media. He was completely overwhelmed. And I was a reporter. So I was covering it too. And through covering the story, I became close with the sheriff. And when it all died down, he said, I really would like to have a public information officer work with me in the sheriff's department. I think I can't handle the media, and, we need to build public trust in the sheriff's department. There wasn't a lot of trust in his office, and that he's an elected official. And I think that was part of it too. And he said, would you like to come to work for me? And I was like, I don't be a sheriff. Like, I'm not, it's like a reporter, I want to be a sheriff. So I said no. And then 6 months later, he came back and he was like, okay, well, how much money do you make as a reporter? And I told him I made $22,000 a year. That's what I made. And he goes, I will double your salary. And I think I was 25.
Wow.
And I was like, you got a deal.
Oh, wow.
So he did. He doubled my salary, and I went to work for the sheriff's department. And that job was incredible and also very depressing. Speaking of trust, all the deputies were like, what is this 25-year-old doing here?
Right.
So I had a lot of trust to build, but we built a really successful department. Our public relations efforts got him more funding from the County Board of Supervisors. So it ended up being a great position. And they still have that position today, even after I left. So I wanted to move home. I moved back home to San Diego and got a job at a college. And now it's been, I don't even know how many years. I don't want people to do math, figure out how old I am. But I've been in higher education ever since. So that's how I started the business. My background's PR and writing, and then I got into college marketing. So it all kind of blended together, and I decided to stick with what I know best, which is higher ed. So
yeah. Well, I think they're lucky to have you.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, it was a nice change to go from writing about, drug busts and terrible things to writing about college graduations and helping students. So it was a really positive change in my career.
Although I think sometimes college students run around campus naked too.
They do. They do. And I'll tell you, my law enforcement background did come in handy, because we had people bring guns to campus.
Yeah.
We had racist graffiti on campus. There's all sorts of things. Like, if it can happen in a city, it can happen on a college campus.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, Cheryl, what are the challenges that your clients face and how do you help them overcome them?
Oh my gosh, so many.
I know.
Honestly, I think their biggest challenge is time. I really feel like our role with my company is to help solve problems and bring expertise, but to also help them solve the time problem. They don't things that need to be done require a lot of thinking, a big team, and they don't have the time to accomplish that. So I think that's honestly their biggest challenge, and that's the role I always try to help them. That I try to play to help them is to give them time.
Of course, knowing what your life is like, I'm surprised you have the time.
Oh my God, I don't have the time. I just had a client say to me, "Do you have capacity to do this?" And I said, "I guess I'll make some."
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
I know. There's that authenticity part too.
Yeah.
We always make
I know she
capacity.
doesn't want me to say no.
Right.
Say no to you, so.
I know.
Yeah.
Is there a book, an app, or a website that you have found particularly helpful personally or professionally, and why?
Oh, well, I wish I had time to read more, but I don't. I love podcasts, Nancy. I've been listening to your podcast, which is amazing. I love it. There's some great agency podcasts out there. There's Two Bobs, which I really have enjoyed. They have those two guys have great banter and great insights. There's the AMI podcast that I listen to. That is fantastic as well. And Onward Nation is another agency podcast. So those are good things to learn about the business of agency life. I know I spend time, I subscribe to a ton of e-newsletters about marketing, but I feel like I can continue to grow around how to run my business. So I tend to really enjoy podcasts that deal with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, I drive a lot, so I enjoy
Yes.
podcasts too.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
And I
I
really like Ted Lasso.
Oh yeah.
Celebrity TV. I watched that this year and I loved it. It was really cute.
Oh, that's great. So how can people get in touch with you, Cheryl?
Well, I'm a big user of LinkedIn, so I accept everybody on LinkedIn, which I need to be more exclusive because now I get like a million LinkedIn emails.
Yeah.
Use my service or do that, but I really like the LinkedIn platform. So please visit me there. And then my email, Cheryl@graduatecommunications.com. And then you can go to our website too, graduatecommunications.com. So visit us there. And I have a podcast as well where it's a higher education specific podcast. So if anybody's listening that's in higher ed, we talk about marketing, but we also talk about things like diversity and student services and challenges. And we do a blog too. That blog is less about higher ed. It's more about marketing and PR and how to be creative. So some of our resources.
Yeah, and I was a guest on your podcast, so we'll include a link to that in the show notes. Yeah.
You were a fantastic guest.
Oh, thank you. Well,
you gave a lot of good tips.
Thank you.
And I have somebody write the description to my podcast. I don't write them myself. And he wrote, you'll have to go read it on the platform, in this lively discussion with Nancy Marshall.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm like, yeah, Nancy's very lively.
Yeah.
It was a lively discussion. It was good. Thank you.
Well, Cheryl, this has been a lively discussion also. So thank you. It's been so fun.
Yes, it's great. It's always fun. And for those of you who are Nancy Marshall fans, Nancy plays a mean tambourine.
I'm not sure everybody knows that, but yeah.
And one day you'll be on the national speaking circuit with your tambourine.
Yeah. I have now
now
performed my tambourine at Disney, in Chicago, and in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't usually bring it out in Maine, though, so maybe I'll start doing that.
Well, you should.
Yeah.
New Year's resolution is play your tambourine once in Maine.
Well, Cheryl, thank you for joining me. I wish you were closer by so we could get together for a little après work drink, but we'll have to do that when we see each other in Charleston.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to catch up with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven Podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the Skills and Games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.